and it's very, very easy to change and modify at will. But you will hear the word node today at least several times in each presentation. And then a taxonomy. Taxonomy is still one of the most confusing parts of Drupal because of the word that was chosen to describe it. A taxonomy is a group of terms so that, and it's confusing because most people think of it as very limited as a category. Oh, my taxonomy is my category. Actually, taxonomy is one step above a category. A taxonomy will allow you to define different categories, right? So a taxonomy can say, okay, it can be a tagging system where you say, these are tags that you add or labels that you add just like you do in lots of other applications. But a taxonomy can also be a very hierarchical, strict categorizing system of animals or plants or genres of movies, right? And so each one of them can be defined, and you go in, you create a taxonomy, and I'm going to say, this is a movie genre, right? And then I'm going to say, these are the main genres, and these are the subgenres, and I create a hierarchical system. And in the exact same system, I can say, I want to create a tagging system for my end users to tag movies, and they can add, all the different themes they think belong to this movie. This is a love story or a tragedy or this has Ben Affleck in it or whatever. They can, and those two taxonomies sit separately as separate categorization systems. And again, just like the nodes, they're very easy to change and modify. I've got this hierarchical system. It's not working. Nobody's using it. They want to define their own. I can change it relatively easily to a tagging system, or give the end user the ability to add their own pieces to it, so it's very extendable. So those are some of the very core concepts. There are others, but these are the ones you probably need for the next few lectures. Drupal Core is the code that comes out of the box. Modules are the code that extend Drupal, and there's as many of those, there are more of those than the core. Templates and themes are the things that make Drupal look good, right, and interact with those other two things. A node is where you store your content, and a taxonomy is a way to define categories. Like I said, it sits one level above a category. It's a way to define categories. Okay, so next. Where to get help? I said before at the beginning that I wanted to not only show you how to get answers to your questions, but how to ask questions. Drupal is a community. A lot of it is volunteers and people that are working for a living and do this kind of thing on a Saturday, And so if you want to get help, it is really, really a good idea to ask the right way. Because if you just come in and demand an answer, right, people are going to ignore you. If you come in and are extremely vague, right, people are going to ignore you. If you come in and ask a question that would take a minute to find the answer to on Google, people are going to ignore you, right? And there's a meme going through called Drupal and lots of other support sites about help vampires. Don't be a help vampire. And there's a link to the article. It's very funny. It's very well written and keeps, and it not only talks about are you a help vampire and don't know it, but also talks about how to deal with them if in your organization. And it could be useful for those of you that might be setting up a social organization. And again, there's a link to that article. We don't have to follow it. Support. Drupal's documentation is pretty good. It's gotten a lot better. There's a whole documentation team. I'm on the documentation team, and we sit there and have enormously long, convoluted debates about how we should present information, the structure and everything like that, trying to make it easier for people to understand it. And so there's a documentation site. There are forums on Drupal, which is also under that same link. There are groups, which is under that same link. Groups are where different people get together. I don't know how many people here are part of Western Mass Drupal group. Anybody? A couple? Right? So Western Mass, and as I said before about the taxonomy system, the groups.drupal.org is a, people can define their own groups, so it doesn't have to be regional. Then nobody said, we're going to break it into little pieces. There's no oversight, overview of this. They didn't say, okay, well, we're going to have regional groups, and then this, and then break it down a little tiny. There are regional groups, Western Mass and Connecticut and New York and things, and all the other countries all over Europe and Asia and Africa. And then there are groups like the documentation team, and then there are groups like nonprofits. So anybody can define a group and try to attract people to it that need to talk about a specific thing. So the groups are really powerful, and something you should probably look into because it's even more focused than a forum. You can go to a forum and ask for a support question. You'll get help, but if you have a very specific group that you want to become part of the community, you look in, whenever you see a link saying check out this group, you may want to go and join that group. IRC, who does not know what IRC is? Okay, IRC is the Internet Relay Chat. It is a very, very old messenger system, older than AOL and all those other ones. And it, a lot of the hardcore Drupalers hang out there all the time, to the point where I wonder how they get anything done, right? And so on that link, the node link there's a link to the IRC channels. There's a main Drupal channel, there's a Drupal support channel, then there's a Drupal services channel where you have to pay for your answers, and there's a dozen other, a Drupal security channel, and lots of other ones. So if you know how to use IRC, and it's not hard, there's also on that link is some ways, some information on how to set up IRC. You can use it in any instant messenger program like Pigeon or what is the little green one on Mac? Atrium? Adium, that's it. Adium and lots of other messenger systems will let you set that up. Mailing lists, along with the IRC channels, are mailing lists, traditional mailing lists you can sign up to, and you can post a mailing, giving information or asking a question, and that goes out to everybody on the list and comes back. Some of them are reserved. If you are working on Drupal, you have to have the security mailing list and be subscribed to that just in case there is a breach that is known, so that you know how to line up to it. But then there are a lot of other mailing lists, again, at these links here. Books. When I started with Drupal, I started with actually version 4. There was like 3 books, and most of them were extremely technical. And it was very, are we running? Oh. Most of it was extremely technical and very hard to get into. Now if you go to Amazon and type in Drupal, you will find 100 books probably, and they are aimed at every audience, from the people that need to learn how to set up a site for the first time, to people that just want to do theming, to people that want to do the hardcore stuff. This is the developer's Bible. The new version just came out, Pro Drupal Development, but there are lots of other books out there. This is, in focused areas, this is probably better than the documentation, although it's getting very close. I was preparing for my next presentation, which is at the end of the day on connecting to databases, and almost everything in this book is mirrored very accurately in the documentation. And so it was this, for that particular subject, this book wasn't that useful because the documentation is very, very good on the database layer. And then services. Actually, so why don't we hit that link, and then I'll go back and show you the other ones so that we're not just staring at a static screen. This is the community area, and it goes over some of the stuff I've talked about. The meetups, we're at one right now. IRC I talked about. Planet Drupal is a blog amalgamator, aggregator. Community Spotlight is the pitch, shows sites that have been used. Commercial support, there are places on Drupal where you can find paid help. And then the forums. So again, all these things I've been talking about, you can follow these links and find them. I'm not going to just leave you here going, well, he talked about all of it, but now how do I get to them? So all of that is on this page. If we go back to the slide and look at the link above, this is the how to get help section. Read this first so that you don't end up crossing culture, getting a cultural clash with the Drupal organization. It is a more formal presentation of some of the ideas brought up in that How to Not Be a Help Vampire article. And it says, here's how to go, here's what you should do first before you even ask a question, and here's how to ask the question, and here's what might happen when you ask the question. And it will help you prevent a lot of headaches and frustration if you find that, the people are being rude, or they're ignoring me, or they're just being way too technical. Well, you can find out why that might be. And so it's a good idea to read that first. And then the last link, which is at the top of the slide, I think. Oh, you already opened it for me? And this is the documentation. This has some holes in it, but it is getting better every single day. Again, I'm on the documentation team, and all of us volunteer to go in and correct mistakes and add information to it constantly. So it is getting to the point where these books are becoming less and less necessary. It's still nice. Most of you like to sit down and read a book away from the computer, and it's a great way to support the people, because a lot of these people that do the books are the same people doing the volunteering here and on the forum. So it's a great way to support them also. So that's how to get help. And if you noticed, I haven't shown a single line of code or even opened up a Drupal site other than Drupal.org. And that was specific because you'll see a lot of that in the next few presentations. I'm here to talk about the community and the fact that the community is what makes Drupal so powerful. And if you're thinking about choosing Drupal, ask the community. Will it solve my problem? And the answer is almost always yes. And there are people that will help you for free. There are people that help, there are companies out there that can help you if you have a larger project that's not going to take a few minutes. And there are lots and lots of people that, like myself, that just love to talk about Drupal, and talk your ear off. And so come join the community, because it's a really, really fun place. It's not, as you can see just from this audience or the audience that was in the first presentation, it is not a bunch of guys that have social problems. It is, a lot of really, really cool people that love what they do and love sharing what they do and have fun doing it. So I think that's it for the formal presentation, yes? Okay. Now, is there questions? Specifically, people came here looking, can I solve my problem? Or, I've heard about this thing that Drupal does. What is it? Anyone? Yes?
What can Drupal do that Dreamweaver can't?
Dreamweaver does exactly what I described in the very beginning. It allows you to lay out a theme, right? And define blocks that are editable and blocks that are not. And then actually creates each individual page separately and then pushes it out to a website. That's perfectly fine when you have 15 pages. It's even fairly stable when you have 100 pages. But after you get over 100, then it has to regenerate those pages every single time you make a template change. It has to regenerate all of those pages and put them out. The other thing is, if you want to rearrange the blocks, then you have to create a separate one. And you have to start keeping track of each one separately, right? You have to keep track. Okay, this is the place where I display my listing of movies. This is my main page where the blocks are all very different. This is a page where I have my forum and the blocks are all very different. And that becomes a very, very... Now, the modern version of Dreamweaver does allow you to write PHP or ASP or other things like that, but you're writing it. You're the one making the connection, and you're the one maintaining it. And so you're still doing, even if you're connecting to a data system, a well-written data system, you're still writing something that's fairly focused on your system. And that may be a perfectly fine solution, but it does become a maintenance headache as Dreamweaver does not scale well, right? If your site suddenly becomes extremely popular and you start getting thousands of pages, then Dreamweaver really starts to bog down, and it becomes harder and harder to keep it in sync, to modify it, and to serve up each individual page. So that's how it's different. Dreamweaver is basically a templating system, and yes, you can add scripts and stuff to it or hook to a back-end database, but it is extremely, specific and focused. And if you walk away from the project or somebody else comes into the project or the project blows up and gets really big, it becomes extremely hard to maintain.
So
Yes.
Drupal has a backend database.
Yes, Drupal has a backend database.
Core.
When you download the core, well, if you just want to download Drupal and play with it, you can go to a couple different companies. The one I know of is Acquia. Download an installer. It will install everything you need. It will install Apache. It will install MySQL. It will install PHP, all with the correct configurations. It will then create your first database and create your user, and it will install Drupal and pop open a browser, and you have a site. The company is called Acquia, Acquia. They're one of the sponsors today out in Boston, and the founder of Drupal, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Andreas, is one of the co-founders of that company. And so it is one of the big players in the Drupal community. And they have an installer, and it's great for just playing around. If you want to put it right on your Mac laptop or your Dell or whatever, they have installers for both Windows and Mac. You can install it, and you don't have to know anything else except that. And so that's if you're really, really just starting, that might be the place to start. If you just want to see how it works and play with it, yes.
Sort of expanding on her question, how does it fit in with, you talked about Joomla, how does it compare to WordPress, Joomla, Ruby on Rails, and Django?
The Django, yep. Let's go over it. WordPress is a blog system, and it's a good one. There are probably more WordPress installs than Drupal installs right now. But it's a blog system, and it is not nearly as easy to extend. There are lots of, WordPress has the similar thing to modules, where you can snap in and put in other parts, but it's not nearly as easy to extend, and eventually you do run up against the limitations that you either have to modify the core code or pay someone to do some really convoluted, jump through some really convoluted loops in order to get a piece in that you want. Like I said, WordPresses pretty much look the same when you load them up, right? Where Drupal sites, you often don't even know you're on a Drupal site. So WordPress is a great system for people that want to blog. But if they want to sell their product or have an inventory system or have a categorization system, that's where WordPress starts to fall apart. Joomla, content management system, great community. I actually was in the Mambo/Joomla community way back. It is a good content management system, right? Meaning that you can, a very traditional content management, you can create web pages with it. However, it does not have the abstraction layers that Drupal has, where you can then connect to different databases and write a custom code that, we write systems that automate product shipping. We write systems that automate subscriptions, all kinds of things that you just couldn't do in a Joomla. Yes.
Just to sort of add on to that, I think one of the problems with in my opinion, one of the problems with the Joomla CMS is that a lot of the add-ons, there are many free ones, but to access better features, usually they've created a system where, oh, you want better features, here, some free modules and pay for, whereas Drupal is completely open source and it's taxable.
Yeah, and that actually caused, I mentioned Mambo. The Mambo-Joomla schism happened when one of the main companies decided they were going to start charging for the add-ons, right, and try to draw back in some of their code and take it away. And it caused it was one of the biggest splits known on the internet 5 years ago. I mentioned a fork before. It was a big fork and a big fight, and the fight hurt both communities in the end. Mambo, I don't even know if it's around, to be honest, and Joomla is still, scarred from that, and it's still somewhat controversial because, people do give you a PHP module, but they use obfuscators to scramble the code so that you can't figure out what it does, and then they charge you to maintain it. And, that's a business model, and I won't say it's a bad one. And again, Joomla's core community is great. They have support, just like I've described here. They have people that will answer your questions endlessly. But there is that controversy that did cause some problems. How are we doing on time? Okay, we are almost out of time, so one more. We're actually over time, but anybody else have a question? Yes?
I have a question on, about how long between releases it sort of takes most of the modules to catch up. So right now there are 10,000.
That's really hard to judge because there's only been, since Drupal became popular around Drupal 4, there's only been 5, 6, and 7. So that's only 3 data points. 4 to 5, well, there wasn't a lot of sites and most people knew what they were doing. 5 to 6 was messy because they didn't make an upgrade path. 6 to 7 has an upgrade path, which means that you can migrate your site. And most of the popular modules have actually promised before release day, which was January 5th of this year, that they would have a release on that day. And many of them actually hit that deadline, many of the most popular ones. Our business plan at our company is I installed Drupal 7 pretty much the day that it came out and started saying, can I build our existing sites in it using, are the modules up to date and stable and stuff like that. Our business plan is to do about a year's worth of migration. Drupal's cycle is pretty quick. The 6 to 7 was almost 3 years. It's usually much faster, but they're getting much better about managing that migration so that it doesn't, leave a lot of sites trailing behind. So yeah, I would say if you're running a company where you're running dozens of sites, I would give yourself I would give your plan on a year to migrate over. If you are just running a few sites, depends on if the modules are supported, it could be a few weeks or a few months. If you're just running a couple small sites. Okay, I do have to make room for the next presenter. So, oh, you pulled up Acquia for us? Okay, yeah. You can pull up my company too. So, thank you very much for everything.